All right. Good morning, afternoon, and or evening. It's the top of the hour. We're going to go ahead and get started with today's webinar on sketches and basic features. My name is David Bazinet with the Solidworks training team. I've been involved in and around Solidworks for over 25 years now, both on this side of the fence and in industry, designing everything from industrial furniture to capital equipment. So today we're launching a series of webinars to kickstart your SolidWorks journey, starting with sketches and features, right? And each of these following webinars is going to build upon what you learned in the previous one. Each webinar is recorded, allowing you to watch it over and over again. All right, and I can't stress that enough because I'm going to throw a lot of material at you, and you're not going to remember everything you see today. Right. And that goes for every webinar I've ever attended, right? You're never going to remember everything out there. All right. So with that being said, these webinars are geared toward a new SolidWorks user. All right. And by the end of today's webinar, what you're going to know how to do is navigate the interface. You're going to be able to create sketches and use basic features like extrude and revolve to create 3D shapes. Right. Now, I say it's geared toward new users, but if there's one thing I've learned over the years is that you never know everything within the software. No one out there knows every pick, click, what every single option and checkbox does within SolidWorks. So you always pick up that one little tip or trick that makes it worth watching the webinar for. Right? So with that said, let's go ahead and get into SolidWorks and start talking about the interface. All right, so I've already launched SolidWorks here, and I've opened up the KitBot assembly along with an individual part. Now, I'm going to use a Windows standard shortcut, Control-Tab, to toggle between these two open windows. And again, that's just standard Windows here. Now, what we're going to see is that the interface between assemblies and parts is going to be very similar. All right, so again, kind of that standardization across the board here. Now, at the very top of the interface, we have our standard pull-down menus. And these are going to contain features, options, tools, right? Kind of like your regular standard Windows programs out there. Below that, we have something called the Command Manager. And you'll notice we have different tabs as well. So features, sketch, mesh modeling, data migration, markup, just some of the tabs I have here. If I look at the assembly, we have assembly and layout. Right, so these tabs will change depending on where you're at, what you're modeling. If you're modeling a part versus an assembly versus a drawing, for example. Okay. Now, you'll notice a little pull-down menu next to each of these features, or most features, and that just gives you different variations of that. For example, line. I have 3 types of lines I can draw here in a part. Right. We'll see more of this when we get to the modeling side of things out there. Okay. So on the left side, we have our feature manager tree. And this is going to contain the history of how we built our model. So it gives us a feature-based history. That makes it easy to go back to later on to make edits. And it also can tell you how someone else made that model. If I look at the assembly, and again, just Control-Tab to switch, I have all the parts that make up this model, along with mates. And you'll learn about mates later on in the webinar series when we talk about assemblies.
Dave, excuse me for a
Yes.
moment. I'm sorry. Somebody has their hand raised. I'm just going to mention, if you have a question, please use the Q&A section, and I will be monitoring that for Dave while he's presenting. We won't be able to respond to hand raises, but please put questions in the panel, and I will try to answer them as we go. Take it back, Dave.
Beauty. Thanks, Joe. The fun part of Zoom and Windows being hidden. All right. So, and again, get back over here. This left side here, the feature manager is going to change again, parts, assemblies, drawings. So for a drawing, again, you would see drawing views, for example. On the right side, we have a bunch of different tabs here. And this is, it gives you different options to kind of manage the data you're working on here. For example, I could apply appearances, I can make configurations. I have a lot that I can do here without leaving the modeling environment. I don't have to open up a separate program, for example, to apply appearances. I can do it all within the tabs here. And again, I'm not going to get into these today in this webinar series because, again, more advanced topics out there. In the center, we have the graphics area, and this is really where your model is visualized. Right? Now, navigating this is pretty straightforward. If I scroll the mouse wheel, it up or down, in or out, depending how you want to look at it, it zooms my view in or out, and it's all based on where your mouse cursor is. So if I go up to the top right or top left here and zoom in, it's going to zoom in on that point. If I move my mouse cursor up here or back down here, that's where it's basing the zoom point on. Okay. If I press down on the scroll wheel, it's going to allow me to rotate my view. If I press Control and hold Control and press down on the scroll wheel, it's going to allow me to pan the view. So it's all really done with the mouse. We do have other toolbars up top, like, for example, up here at the heads up toolbar, that we can use to navigate, but it's quicker with your mouse. Okay. So if I left click on something like this face, for example, I get a pop-up toolbar here. And if I right click, I'm going to get a right click menu, an expandable right click menu. Now, these are going to be features, options, whatnot, that you would typically use when you're working. Right? So for example, if I left click again, I can create a new sketch on this face. We'll talk about sketches coming up in a little bit. If I hold down the right mouse and drag slightly, I'm going to open up something called mouse gestures. Now, this is context sensitive, meaning, again, if I'm in a part versus an assembly, I will see different features, or I could see different features. I'll talk about that coming up. If I press the S key, Sierra, it opens up the shortcut bar. Now, you can do a lot with the S key here. Okay, so again, we see features on there, like we did before, some features that we see up here. But if I start typing in something like, if I can type today, if I start typing like dynamic, it's going to filter out features with that name. If I start typing line, you're going to see all the features with line that deal with lines. The other powerful thing here is if I don't know where a feature is, let's say I don't know where this feature is right here. If I click on the eyeball, and I'm not touching the mouse right now, Solidworks is going to go through, and my screen's a little off because of Zoom, and it's going to highlight where that feature is. Right. Now, what I'm getting at here with the S key, with mouse gestures, right? Yes, you have tabs up top. We have pull-down menus here, but really, the S key and mouse gestures help speed up your design process. They help save the mouse travel, if you will, meaning I'm not doing one of these numbers all day. I'm not going up to the toolbars all day. I'm not going to the pull-down menus to pick every single feature I want. I can do it all with the S key and with mouse gestures. Now with that, these are completely customizable as well, right? So if I come in and I right click up on the command manager, I'll see customize right here. That's going to open up this little dialog here. And here's where I can really customize the entire layout of my interface. I can turn on or off toolbars, shortcut bars. There's that S key I was talking about. And let's say I come in and type line. Again, it filters it out. All I have to do is just drag and drop it on. If I don't want a feature there, drag and drop it off. Okay. Commands, again, menus, keyboard shortcuts. I want to, let's say again, look for the line. And if I look, scroll down, Right now, I remapped SolidWorks to the L key for the line feature. So if I press L on my keyboard, it's going to open up the line feature. And again, mouse gestures. Now with mouse gestures, you can have as little as 2 or as many as 12. The way I approach mouse gestures, if you start off with 8, 12 right off the bat, you will get confused with it just because of how you have to navigate it with just like that. See? So what I tell people is to start off with 2. Maybe start off with 4 and then gradually increase the number there to whatever feature you use the most. Now that's one way to customize. The other way is if I press the S key and I start typing, again, I'll just pick on line. I can just take it and drag and drop just onto here, right? Just drag and drop it on. Or let me pick one off. I'll just get so the dialogue's here, or I can just, remove it, whatnot. So you can always come in and customize it this way as well. Just drag and drop them on here. All right. Now, orientation in here, and let me just switch back to the assembly, make this a little easier to visualize. So we talked about rotating the mouse here, okay? But we have our standard views right here from a pull down. If I press the space bar, I get that same dialog box. All right, so again, I don't have to go up top here. I can just press space bar. Okay. So when I do that, this view cube opens up. And if I hover over one of these faces, any of them, in the top right, you're going to see a preview of that particular angle. If you click on that face, it takes you to that orientation. Like so. Now, if you don't want that dialog, that cube here to pop up, just toggle it off here in the top right corner of the orientation dialog. So now when I press spacebar, I don't get that to appear. Click on any of the standard views, just like that. Now, if you're not sure what a feature does, what you can do is hover over it. And in this case with mate is going to graphically show you what it does, and the tooltip will give you a little blurb about that particular feature. If I go to here, let's go back to the part. If I hover over the line, again, it's going to graphically show you what the line feature will do. It's going to create a line. All right. So as I wrap up with the interface here, and again, this is just kind of to set the baseline here, get our kind of orientation right as we move through this. 2 shortcut keys that I've used constantly over the years. Let's say, for example, I'm zoomed way into here like so. If I press the F key, Foxtrot, it's going to zoom the entire model into my graphics area. So no matter if I'm zoomed way in like that, or if I'm zoomed way out like this, and let me just pan that way. So I have no idea where my model is. If I press F, it shows up. It fits to that screen. That's also a good troubleshooting tool when you're sketching as well. And we'll talk about sketching coming up next. The other shortcut key is Control-7. So let's say I have this model all in this weird position here, right? If I press F, it gives me that orientation. Well, if I press Control-7, it switches it to an isometric view, or kind of think of it like a diagonal view of the model. So F, Control-7, you'll see me use those constantly throughout today. All right. So with that being said, let's jump into sketch modeling here. So what I'm going to do first, before anything, is create a brand new part. So if I click new up top here, I get this dialog to appear. Now, why do I need to create a new part? Well, sketching is the foundation or really first step in part creation. All the features like extrude, revolve, they all depend on a sketch. So in my templates here, I have 3 available: a part, assembly, and a drawing template. In typical Solidworks fashion, you can have as many templates available as you need. All right, so for example, maybe you have different part templates for different units. Now, when I click OK, the screen is going to kind of change over, and now we have a blank part template, or a blank part in that case. First thing I want to do is check my units in the bottom right corner. We're going to see this mmgs, millimeter gram second. If I click on the arrow, it pops up. Okay. Now, this allows me to change the units to be different than what the template was based off of. So this template was based off of millimeters. Well, I can change it to inches if I wanted to, just by selecting it here. Now it's referencing inches versus millimeters. All right. The other thing we're going to notice, and this goes for assemblies as well, is that we have 3 default planes and an origin. And this is going to help us start modeling, right? Now, the planes, front, top, and right, these come in every, again, part and assembly. And what they are, think of them as a building block for your part, okay? Think of it like a front view, a top view, and a right view. Now, an easy way to think of a plane, okay, is, and we'll talk about sketch planes coming up, it just gives you that starting point, okay? So the planes aren't visible by default as well, too. You can make them if you set them up in your template. So click on them, and they will appear here, or right-click, and you can toggle the visibility. But again, I'll get into sketching on a plane in a second here, but just think of them as kind of the building block of your part, or assembly for that matter. The origin, what this is, it's a fixed point in 3D space at the center of 3D space. It is where the 3 planes intersect. All right, so my origin is right here, and the 3 planes intersect that point. Right? Now, all these right here, the front, top, and right plane and origin are fixed in this 3D space. You cannot move them. You can create additional planes as well if you wanted to, right? But you cannot move these 3 original ones. All right. So when we talk about sketching, all right, all sketching for the most part, there are exceptions, is done on a plane. Okay, now the plane could be one of the 3 standard that I talked about a second ago. Could be one I created, I put in manually. It could be a face of an existing part. All right, so again, sketches are typically created on planes. And again, there are exceptions like 3D sketching. I'm not going to get into that during this session. Sketch planes confuse new users, okay? And just because it's a new concept out there. An easy way to think of a sketch plane is like, pretend you're drawing on a piece of paper. That piece of paper is my sketch plane. I can take that piece of paper, put it on the floor, I can put it on a wall, I can put it on a desk, and then I can start drawing on that piece of paper. Okay? If I took my pencil and instead of drawing on that piece of paper, if I tried drawing in the air, nothing would happen because that paper isn't there. I don't, or in other words, I don't have that sketch plane defined. I don't have that basis to start on. Right. So to start a sketch, maybe I'll click on the front plane. I can pre-select or not. Either way, it doesn't matter. Whatever works for you. Okay. So up on my command manager, I'll go to sketch and then click sketch. Now, like I said earlier, maybe I have sketch in my shortcut toolbar. Maybe I have sketch in mouse gestures. In this case, I just have standard views. Whatever way you prefer to work, again, make this suit your workflow, how you work. So maybe I'll click on the front and click on the sketch feature here. And then what's going to happen is your orientation is going to become normal to that sketch. What I mean by normal to is all I'm doing is simply looking at that sketch head on. Okay. Now, why did I pick the front plane here? Why didn't I pick the top plane, for example? If I click on the top plane, we can see how it's compared to how it looks compared to the front plane. Well, when I'm picking a plane, I'm trying to think about how this first sketch is going to be related to the finished part. And I want to try and correlate them somehow. I want them to try to match up here. If I'm creating a flat plate or a gasket, maybe I pick the top plane instead. Okay. Now, will you always pick the correct plane to start a part? No, you won't. It takes practice. It takes time to really, for that. But again, if you pick the wrong plane, it's not the end of the world. Okay. So in this case, because I want the wheel to be vertical when I'm done, meaning if I open up this wheel right here, again, I just click on it and click open, meaning I want the wheel to be kind of in this orientation. Well, this is where I'm going to pick maybe the front plane or the right plane, depending on how I'm going to model that part. Again, if I pick the top plane, it's not the end of the world. And then just Control Tab to get back. All right. So again, planes, yes, they're important to choose the correct one. As you get used to SolidWorks and modeling in this environment here, it's going to come natural on how to pick the plane. So as you can guess, we're going to go ahead and create a wheel. So let's go back to our front view. And again, whichever way you want to get to the front view, I could press, shortcut keys as well too. You're going to find there's going to be multiple ways to get to the end goal here. All right. So in here, I'm going to use the shortcut toolbar to create my sketch here. And in this case, I'm going to create a circle. Now, with a lot of sketch entities here, there's a couple ways we can create it, a click-click method or a click-drag. Click-click is just that, left-click, left-click. Click-drag is left-click and hold the left mouse button, drag out, and let go. Okay. Now we have other features like line, spline, arcs, rectangles, slots, polygons, you name it. Okay. In this case, because I'm making a wheel, I'm going to make the main profile of the wheel, which is going to be circular. Okay. Now, why did I click on the origin here to attach those two sketches? So if I undo it again and Control Z to undo, again, standard Windows features here. Why did I click on the origin to create my circles? Well, as I come up and hover over the origin, notice that little yellow box that appears. If I left click or when I left click, SolidWorks is going to apply a relation automatically. It's going to connect the center point of the circle to the origin. You want your sketches tied to the origin in some manner, either directly like that, or maybe you attach a dimension to it. If I wanted this offset slightly. And again, that helps fully define your sketches. And I'll talk about fully defining in a second here. So all good sketches are tied to the origin in some way, shape, or form. Okay. Now, you're going to notice the sketch is blue right now. That means the sketch is underdefined. That means I can come in, left click and hold on this entity and drag and resize it. Just like that. As I fully define a sketch, I'm going to lock it down, meaning that I can't just come in and drag something. I would physically have to change something on the sketch, like a dimension, for example, for it to update. That's going to be good modeling practice across industry. You always want fully defined sketches. Again, There are exceptions out there, right? But for today's webinar, we're going to fully define everything. All right. So let's come in and add some dimensions. So we have both circles tied to the origin. So right now they can only change in diameter. If I tried to move the center point, it can't. So smart dimension, if I hit the pull down, you have a lot of options available here. Right, so for the most part, you can typically get away with smart dimension. But if there's a specific way you want to dimension it, whatever the entity is, you have additional options here. Click on the circle. I'm going to move out a little bit. And I'll place my first dimension. Now you notice it's 201 millimeters right now. Well, if I come in and let's change that value to 100. There we go. Helps if I have number lock on. Let's change that to 100. What will happen when I do that is my entire sketch is going to scale based on that first dimension. So I don't have to be critical with getting the exact shape down here as far as dimensions go when I'm sketching. It's all going to scale as I place that first dimension. Now, you may have noticed when I made the circles earlier, I have a little radius here next to my cursor. That's going to tell you, in this case, the radius of the circle as you're sketching. When I did the first two, I didn't pay attention to it because it's not as critical for here. It's all going to scale. Again, speeding up my modeling here. I have a smart dimension tied to my shortcut D for dimension. So I don't even need the shortcut toolbar here. I'll click on the second circle, place a dimension, and let's make that 20. And you'll notice and I'll just hit escape to get out of dimension. Notice how my sketch turned from blue to black. Black means that sketch entity is defined. So if I come in and try to move this now, it's not going to move because it is defined. It's fully defined. The center point is fixed, and I have a diameter here. All right, so let's add a line now. Again, shortcut toolbar, go to my line feature. I'll tie it to the origin and maybe the quadrant here. And you'll notice again, those relations apply. So there's my fully defined line. Well, I don't need this line to be considered for the feature later on. So I just want it to model around. When I click on the line, I can change it to construction, meaning it's going to be there to be able to reference around and it won't be considered for that final feature. In this case, when I do an extrude. Let's say I want to draw half a profile. I don't want to have to draw the entire thing. I want to speed up again that modeling process. Well, that feature I kind of talked about earlier, we have a dynamic sketch mirror. So what that will do is as I draw, is going to copy based about a construction line, that entity that I'm drawing. So it's going to duplicate it for me. I don't know where it is. So let's come up and S key, start typing in dynamic sketch or dynamic mirror entities. Now, if I click on it here, it opens the feature up automatically. So again, you can kind of see how the shortcut mouse gestures, I don't need those features up top. I have everything right within the graphics area. So first I need to sketch a line or select a line that I want to mirror about. Now I'll go into my line tool and I'll start sketching. And as I place this first line, notice the line down below. Now I'll zoom in a little bit so we can see it a little bit better here. Now with the line feature, I can draw a line and arcs in the same feature all in the same time. I don't have to get out of line, go into arc, and vice versa. So to do that, I have my endpoint out, hover over the origin, and then move out again. And there's our arc. I'll do the same thing again. Move out, come back, And I'll just attach it here to this line. Again, I'm paying attention to that yellow box in the bottom right corner. And I'll just hit escape to get out. And there's my sketch. I drew half of it, used this construction line to duplicate on the other side. So in this sketch right here, I'm going to use both manually added relations and dimensions to fully define this profile here. So typically you want to add your relations first and then dimensions after. That way you're reducing the amount of relations you need to create that entity or that profile. I'll hold control and I'll pick both of these lines. And I'm going to make them collinear. Again, I'm just picking this from the pop-up toolbar. I could pick it from the left-hand side as well. All right, again, whatever works for you. Just like that. Now up top, I need to fix this right here. I have these two lines like so. Well, reality is they're going to be tangent to each other. So let's take care of that one next. I'll pick the two, make them tangent. And that just fixed that right there. These two, again, we'll make those collinear, or maybe not. What happens if I mess up adding a relation, just like I did here? Well, again, Control Z or undo. Click it up top. If you want to bring it back, redo. So when that happens, and it will happen, it happens, I still do it to this day. Don't be afraid to undo. You don't have to get out of the sketch and then start over. Just undo and redo. So let's come in and maybe we'll do something like that. And let's say I don't want this line here. Well, it doesn't matter. If you don't want it, click on it and press delete. So if you're sketching and it's not coming out how you want it to come out, don't be afraid to delete them. Go back into the line feature. In this case, maybe I'll connect it like so. Add a tangent relation again, just like that. Right? So again, don't be afraid to modify this. You don't have to get it right the first time around. There are going to be times where you're modifying sketches constantly, trying to get that right profile you're looking for. All right, let's add some dimensions. So if I click on these two entities, I'll get a dimension to appear right here. And I'm going to say whatever, I'll keep it whatever it is, 15. If that doesn't give you what you want, you can always go to the dimension properties and change the leader placement. Or as I'm dimensioning, I can come in, pick the line, hold shift, and it'll pick the outside or opposite side edge that I want. Right, so shift as you're dimensioning to an arc will dimension to that side wherever you're on versus to the center point. Make that 3, and what happened here? Notice again how, as I added the dimensions, the sketch changed. So I could undo that, or in this case, I know it needs a tangent relation. Oops. Or maybe not. It depends again on what you're making here. Right? In this case, I'll just leave it because that's a cool shape. Now, if you need to figure out what is left to define, don't be afraid to grab your sketch and just drag it around. In this case, I can move it up and down. Control Z places it back to where it was. I'll click the 2 center points. We'll make that 10. This one here, again, can see what's happening. Okay. Undo. Maybe I'll come up here at an angle. Maybe we'll make that 60 degrees, like so. And because I got rid of that line, I need to, earlier, I just happened to know, oops, that should have been 10. And you'll notice here, as I'm changing these values, so if I change this to 6, for example, Notice what's happening to the sketch. So again, as you update these values, your sketch is going to update based on the dimensions. Okay. If you delete a dimension, again, undo. Okay. So now that we have this weird looking cutout here, I want to make duplicates of that. I want this to go all the way around. Okay. Now what we can do is use a circular pattern within the sketch feature here. Or we can do it as an applied feature, which Joe is going to talk about in the next webinar here. So again, multiple ways to get to the end goal here in SolidWorks. You're not tied to one specific way to model here. So in this case, I'm just going to add one real quick. My center point is going to be the origin. So I want this to go around the origin. And I'll just pick the entities. Just like that. How many do I want? Just like that. And accept. And now I just made all those copies. All right. So I want to make this a 3D part now. Maybe my sketch is done. So if I have the sketch open or not, it doesn't matter. All right. It's just a couple of extra mouse clicks if you don't. On my features tab, I can go to extruded boss base, revolve, swept boss, loft, boundary surface, different surfacing options as well, depending on what I'm trying to create. For today, we're just going to create either an extruded boss part or a revolved part. Now, when you go to extrude, you're going to get this yellow preview showing you what this is going to look like if I click accept right now. You'll also notice this purple shading here. Okay. That purple shading is indicating where you have closed contours. A contour is simply a bunch of sketch entities that are continuous and create an enclosed shape. So that's what all these are right here. These are all contours. So that's what you see within the dialog here for the extrude. Like every feature here, just work from the top down. All right, different termination options. So blind is going to go out a distance. If I remember my design intent, right, that's one thing you want to consider what you're trying to make here. Well, if I take a look at my front plane, you can expand it right here. My front plane is running at the back of the part. Well, I want this to be centered on that plane. On the top plane, it's fine. And the right plane, it's fine. It's just that front plane here. So what I can do is pick mid plane instead. What that will do is equally split that distance that I have here. So if I put in 25, it's going to split it 12 and a half, 12 and a half. Now, the reason I have these contours here is because I can come in and pick and choose what I want to make the part out of. So maybe I just want these four here. If I click accept, that's what I'm going to get for a shape. If that's not what I want, well, you can always click on it on the feature and then edit feature. Maybe I forgot one. So I can come down to selected contours and then pick that additional one that I want to include. Or maybe I come in here, clear it all out, pick this, do something like that. Now, the reason I did one sketch here with those in is because you can use a sketch across multiple features. So you can have one driving sketch be used by, let's say, for example, that extruded boss, and maybe I want to use an extruded cut for that sketch. So what I can do is we'll have this, instead of be blind, I'm going to say through all in both directions, or maybe through all. And let's say I want to pick from my selected contours. I don't want the original sketch. I want maybe this contour, that contour, and if I can pick it, let's change the shading here to make this a little bit easier. There we go. And that contour. Again, I'm just changing my shading here to make it a little easier to select. And let's say I just want this to go through one side of the part. So I can flip the direction and accept. So now I have that one sketch. I have all the cutouts in it. This cutout doesn't go through the part, while these ones do. And they're all controlled by this sketch right here. If I come in and let's change this to 15. Let's change this to 15. We'll increase that. So if I increase it, guess what? It's going to update now. I only have to edit that in one place versus other places. You have a lot available here as you create these extrudes, okay? You have a lot of different options available to you. I could pick a face and offset it from that face instead. So the cut, if we go back to that, instead of through all, I could say up to surface, pick the surface, and then offset it if I wanted to. Or I could say offset from surface, or offset from surface. And let's say I want it to be 2 millimeters. And accept it. Whatever face I picked the opposite face. All right. So again, we don't obviously have time to go through every single option you have available here, right? Get in there, explore with it, right? Play with it, see what's available to you. Okay, so there we go, kind of like what we did earlier. Now, another way you could have approached this, right? Here's the sketch I have right here. Well, if I come in and I need a dimension, so again, we'll just finish that up, right? If I dimension to a line, the construction line, and go above it, I could dimension the diameter versus the radius. Here I have those couple profiles again, profile 1, profile 2. If I go to revolve, it's going to do kind of the same thing extrude does, but it's going to need an axis, a point to rotate around. So that's that construction line that I created right here. I can come in now, pick this for a profile. And this is what we're going to get. Okay. So how could you make this wheel? You could probably make it at least a half dozen different ways. Okay. Again, the point is you have flexibility here for that. You're not trapped into one way or another to model here. You have plenty of options. I joke with people, how many ways can you make a cube? There's probably a dozen different ways to make just a standard cube. All right, so the point is to get out there, play with it. You know, you're not going to break anything, and have fun with it. All right. All right. So as we're wrapping up here, and I want to be respectful of your time, let me just get back in here. There is a bunch of learning
Dave,
content.
may I interrupt for a moment?
Oh, yep,
I have a couple of questions that are SolidWorks. So before we switch over to this, can we do a couple of things in SolidWorks?
we can.
Okay, one person asked if you can demonstrate parametric methods. So can you go in and just change a dimension or
Yep.
or show some edit sketch, edit feature stuff just to show how SolidWorks is parametric?
Yep. So we kind of did that already with this sketch here when I came in and modified these sketches right here. So right now it's 15. If I make it 10, we're going to see that shrinks. And let me just make this one 10 as well. And of course, you can tie these dimensions together, whatnot. Let's make this 45. So we'll shrink the angle as well. So here's what we have. If I come in and rebuild it, there we go.
Very nice.
Yep.
Another question was, can you please also guide driving and driven dimensions?
Yes. So when you're dimensioning, and you just get rid of all this, get it a little bit clean. So I think this, I got rid of it earlier. All right. So Driving and driven dimensions. By default, driving dimensions will appear black. Driven dimensions will appear in a light gray. A driving dimension is going to change a sketch entity, like this 20 right here. If I double click on it and make it 10, that's going to change to 10 millimeters. Okay. So if I change it to 20, it goes back. A driven dimension, there we go, think of a driven dimension like a reference dimension. All right. It's just there to tell you what a value is. It is being driven by those driving dimensions. A little word salad there. Right. A driven dimension, you cannot change because it's based on those driving dimensions. Okay. So in this case, because I have the sketch pattern in here and I have it equally spaced, being driven by the sketch pattern itself, this 15 degrees is just telling me this is 15 degrees. You can't physically change that on there. Just like if I came in and drew a rectangle, and let's say I placed a line at the center of this rectangle. I came up and made this 75 millimeters. This is tied to the center, right? And let me just fix this point here so it's fully defined. And we'll add something for the height. So I have my rectangle. I just fixed the point in 3D space right here. It's driven by the width and the height, or width and depth, width, length, however you want to look at it. If I came in and tried to dimension this, well, it's driven. I could make it driving, but I'm going to make that a conflict. So there's the light gray. So the overall is 75. This is telling me what half of that is. Make it 80. It updates to 40.
We're going a little deep, Dave.
Yeah.
Well, just because I know I have other questions and I know we have other slides and we're already over time. So
Yep.
I think that one was good. Let me ask you one more CAD question and then we'll go to the slides. The person wrote, how to give dimensions with reference to the circumference of the circle. Can you explain again?
So, okay. Yep. So let me just get rid of some of these dimensions just to clean it up a little bit. And I'll do this one as well. All right. So when you're in dimension, if you click on the entity and you hold the shift key and then place your dimension as you're holding shift, that will allow it one way. All right. So it doesn't matter which one you use, as long as you're holding shift before you pick the first entity, that will give it to you there. Or if you dimension it and you want to change it afterwards, click on the dimension, go to the leaders tab, and at the bottom you have arc condition, center, min, max. Right now you're looking at the minimum value, or the minimum distance between the two. If I pick max, it goes to the opposite side, like you see here. And of course, center would go to the center.
Perfect. All right, let's head over to the slides because there are so many certification questions. I cannot wait to answer live.
There you go. All right. So what it comes down to is you have 3 QR codes here. There are a ton, and I mean a ton of resources out there for you. And it doesn't matter what level you're at as far as, learning SolidWorks here. We have 400 lessons in 100 learning paths out there. We have certification prep courses, right? If you search for SolidWorks practice problems, or again, scan the QR code, you're going to be taken to 100 practice problems to help you for the CSWA, right? Of course, we're always adding more as well, too, right? If you're a mentor or a teacher, if you're on that side versus the student side, we have curriculum you can use for your classroom. We just launched a bunch of projects out there to help guide you step by step on how to create, for example, a bridge, a catapult, stuff like name tags. There's a bunch out there. All right. And again, it's step by step to help create, or step by step with that course content. Right. It doesn't matter as well. how you learn SolidWorks. If it's, videos, classroom, there's material to cover everything here. Right. And again, scan the QR code. It'll take you to those places. For FIRST Robotics, we have a page dedicated to that. And again, QR code to quickly get to it. All right. We give SolidWorks to FIRST Robotics teams. We give a parts kit for that as well, too. And again, learning resources like I just talked about a minute ago.
Before you switch slides, Dave, this question came up a number of times during the chat. How do I get SolidWorks? How can I get a free copy of SolidWorks? If you're part of a competition team, this is the way to do it.
Yep, exactly. All right. All right, so 2 slides left here. One is the upcoming webinars. I kind of showed that in the beginning here. Joe, who's in the chat right now, is going to be talking about applied features next, and that's on Thursday, so 2 days from now. And if you attend all 6 webinars, you will get a free CSWA voucher. All right, so our EDU side will reach out with that voucher, and then off you go. Get certified.
Here's where I need to jump in because this is the number one question in some form or variety in the chat. So let me explain. One, we are going to conduct all 6 webinars. We will receive the attendee report for each of the 6 webinars. Then sometime in late August or early September, our EDU marketing team that is helping to sponsor these webinars will compare the 6 different attendance lists and determine who has attended all 6 of them. That team will then reach out to anyone that attended all 6 and offer a free CSWA voucher. We will not be offering vouchers for any other exams. These are basic level webinars, and we feel they're only appropriate for CSWA. And it will come out sometime in September. We will contact you. You do not have to do anything else other than show up and attend all 6 of the webinars in this FIRST Robotics series. I hope that answers a lot of the questions people had. The other question people had is where will the webinars be recorded and placed? Yes, they are being recorded, and no, I don't know where they'll be placed. Wherever the EDU marketing team normally places webinars is my answer, but unfortunately the person I needed to ask was on holiday. So I'm trying to get that answer, and hopefully I will have it for you in later webinars to help guide you. But I'm sure we will advertise the recordings in the same place where we advertise these webinars to begin with. So I hope that answers the majority of the questions.
I know we are over time here. Appreciate sticking around, but yeah, if there's no other questions, I think we're good to go. Thanks for joining, and we will see you in 2 days.